Welcome fans of flip clocks. Today we're going to look at a special clock, a Copal RP-160. This clock is actually found in the TV series Sopranos. That's Polly holding that clock. It is the same clock, they've just removed the faceplate, evidently because it had Copal on it. But what we're going to do today is we're going to look at this clock, the Copal RP-160. We're going to talk about how to disassemble the clock and do some minor restoration. And you can see the clock is a simple alarm clock. It's nothing except a clock and an alarm. So we're looking at the clock. Let's figure, well, how do you take this thing down? It's got two screws to hold the motor, the clock mechanism in, but no other really obvious way to take apart. You can see that here, that separates a little bit, but there's a principle here with all flip clocks: do not force things. And so you got to look a little closer. And if you look right there underneath the first number, you'll see a little opening there. You take a flat blade and you just kind of push in there, and that will pop that right out. And that's how you get started to disassemble this clock here. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get this cord free, because that clock mechanism is not going to come out unless this cord's free here. And you can see that at first I looked at that and thought you would compress that and then push it into the clock, but it's actually the opposite. So get a pair of slip joint pliers so that you don't over crush that thing, or just be careful. And you apply a little pressure as you start to pull out, and it actually comes out pretty easily there. You just open that up like a clamshell there, take that off, and set that aside. You definitely need that later. Okay, now the mechanism will slide right out without any problem. You can, you see here, that's the alarm set button. You just need to throw that away like that. No, you need to be careful with it. And we'll talk later how to get the clock back in that thing. So if you see I've got this energized because the light's on, but that motor is not turning. So this clock is not functional at this time. So we'll have to do I've done this before in videos, but I'm going to show you how to free that up. And no, don't just spray a bunch of WD-40 in there. It will work, but I'm going to explain why that's not necessary or even appropriate. And we're going to, later you'll see this clock moving a lot better than that. So what you need to do is you need to get yourself some isopropyl alcohol to get started, and the stronger the better. So this 91% I got at Walmart. And you want to get you a glass or something like that. And you want to very carefully pour that in there as not to make a mess, because if your wife catches you doing this stuff, she is going to flip. So she's not here today. So anyway, you just kind of stick that right down in there. You don't have to take this motor off conveniently. You stick it down in there and give it a whirl. And that's what that's doing, is that's cleaning out dust and grease and all kinds of garbage in there, because that's what's holding you back. It's not a lack of lubrication that's holding you back. It's the fact that there's oil and grease in there. So I've just twirling that sucker around, and you can probably already see that it's moving a lot freer than it was. Now, I didn't used to oil these things, but I've started to oil them here, and I'll show you how I do it. Now you can see when it energizes, that clock turns right on and the motor starts spinning right away. So you don't have to oil these, but I want you to realize that there's only one point there, right there at the axle, that really needs any kind of lubrication at all. All inside there, it looks like it might be moving parts. That's not. That's the stator. That does not move. And if I've had another video where I showed where I took that apart, it's just a bunch of copper windings. The only moving part is the rotor that's on the outside there, and that it moves on the axle. So what you need to do is just a little drop of oil and aiming down towards that thing. Now you'll see it drop on the outside there, but if I move it in a little bit, you know it's dropping on the inside as well, about the same speed, so I know it hit there. I'll wipe off the excess and just give it a couple twirls. That's the only place that really needs lubricating. There is no other reason to lubricate anywhere else, and when you use WD-40, that gets gunky and it will actually attract dust, and you'll have to do it again in the future. Beautiful. So we're going to show you how to reassemble this clock. It's not hard. There's a couple little tricks. Now you see, that's when it's up like that, that's when the alarm is on or set. And if you look here, here's the little lever. That's up, down. So we want it up. And as I aim in there, you see I'm aiming for that little single hole there. And it's not that hard though. All I got to do is make sure this is elevated to flush with the cabinet, and then it goes right in. Really no problem at all. We'll flip it up and down to make sure it's seated just fine, and you can obviously tell that it is switching that switch. The next thing is to get our little cord thing here to hold the cord in place. And if you recall, the heavier or top, the bigger piece was on top, and then the smaller piece just kind of crimps it, just pushes in there, like shutting a door. And then at this point you just need to work with it a little bit, kind of fiddle around until you get that lined up there. Once you're lined up, it's a simple matter of giving it a steady push straight in. Just like that. Okay, before we finish assembly, we want to make sure everything's still set up good. We'll give this a twirl, make sure everything's moving freely, and it is. So now we're ready to put the faceplate back on. Here's our faceplate, and you see that's the top, there's the bottom. Now see that little tab there? If you look there, that's where that's going to catch. So again, do not force anything. If it's not going in right away, just kind of take your time, work it a little bit, make sure everything's lined up, there's no rush, and you give it a snap in there, and there it is. It's reassembled. When you get the time, come visit us at flipclockfans.com.